Let's talk mobility.
Let's talk mobility. So, we're here in the motor world, and of course, we're interested in mobility. That's why we're sitting here together today. And so, still, I want to ask you this question formally again. What is mobility to you? What does this word say to you?
What does mobility mean to me? I like to define it quite broad. So it goes all the way from health in terms of the mobility you as a person. I mean, we're all fixed in this human body.
Okay.
That type of mobility, which leads me to what most people think of, which is more like transporting yourself most of the time, or things, like transporting a lot of goods and services, I guess. And for all of this, we're using like certain technologies. Most of the times we call it devices. And then obviously we're thinking mobility, we're thinking cars, airplanes, things like this, trains. All of this is mobility. But it starts with you as a person, because you may want to move yourself and be able to move yourself as good as possible. And once you come to a limit, you want to extend that. Maybe you want to be faster than you can run, or then, when you cannot swim, you want to take a boat, right? That makes you more mobile. And what also is clear, at least I cannot fly. So I need an airplane.
Like only Superman can fly.
Only Superman can fly. So that means mobility. And that what it comes all from I think you mentioned that earlier when we talked, freedom. I want to be free to fly. That's where someone came up with the idea to maybe let's use technology to fly, because we cannot do it by ourselves. But it's important to keep in mind that mobility starts with ourselves, and if we're mobile and trying to be as mobile as possible and not destroy that over time.
That's very interesting approach, because I think normally people nowadays, if they talk about mobility, because we're so stuck into this city and civilizations, like you do not really think back, have a step back to go back to the human body itself. And that's interesting that that's actually your approach, that you go back to the human body, and mobility is, of course, like you can move, and that's already mobility itself. And anything goes upon that, it's just extension for what we already wants to do, but couldn't do that.
Or we're able and not able anymore. And if you think very futuristic external skeletons, for example,
Oh yeah, sure.
makes you stronger than you could technically be, but also it can help people who are not as strong as they're technically supposed to be in their age, or maybe they had an accident or something else. So then that when technology and devices come into place.
That's very interesting. Yeah. And also, I think you brought a very good point, because you bring basically the idea of time in this whole concept as well, right? So we have something in the past we could, but not now. And in the future, with the developing of the technology, we're kind of doing something we couldn't do today. But it's like enabling us to do that further. And that brings a very interesting topic, and also that's very important for me, and also why I think mobility is interesting, if you want to know.
Yeah, of course I want to know.
Yes, I guess mobility is a very good playground. That's how I see it. Like it's a playground for all different technologies. Like nowadays we're in a time that things are changing so fast, and technologies are happening, innovations are happening. And mobility is a very good playground for all those technologies. That's my approaches. If you imagine like this self-driving cars, autonomous driving thing, and the cars it drive itself, and nowadays you always need a person to drive the car.
Yeah.
But in the future, you just ride the car. You can totally enjoy the ride. That makes the journey way more enjoyable.
Oh yeah, that's a very interesting point, which makes it like it's not only for practical reasons. And you mentioned two things. I don't know if I can distinguish them directly, but the journey,
Yeah.
which is transporting yourself or others, people, goods, or whatever, services from A to B. But it's also the journey in ourselves, which again I could bring back to movement in terms of our body, mobility in terms of our body. It's just very good in itself to go for a run, to move, to be on a playground. Kids do that. We kind of sometimes forget to do that. And in itself, it's an enjoyment. Has not to be a bigger reason. It's not that a child goes onto a playground and has to move from A to B, but the movement in itself is the journey, whereas it has a playful approach. So all of these words kind of like intertwine and go together.
Exactly. Like you mentioned, the first point is like you, of course, want to transport something from A to B because, of course, you need to go from work to home and then from home to work again, probably to gym on the way. But yes, it's so more than that. Like before, if I am only person who's using my car, I need to drive. It's less than a journey, I would say. It's more like, yes, I'm transporting myself. But yes, I think what the technologies are enabling today and what mobility are, at least for me, like, and also for the future, I guess it's more about this journey part. It's about the person. It's about the whole experience, like how I spend my time. Is that if I'm riding with my family, friends, beloved ones, I want to really spend quality time on this journey, and I want the future mobility to make sure that I can focus on this part that values way much to me than making this whole journey happen. But of course, there you can also ride a bus, ride a train. Of course, you have different options. But I also want to have this freedom of having my space and having the freedom of spend my time whenever I want while moving to another place.
I do think that mobility in the future is gonna give us, or give everyone, even more freedom. It's not just the freedom I can fly from A to B for a certain amount of money, but it's also the expanding freedom in sense of what you mentioned, the experience. So maybe in the morning I have to go to work to a certain place. I have the freedom not to drive. And then maybe the same day, I change the experience and I actually maybe change the kind of device I'm using. Let's say in nowadays terms, a sports car. I actually do want to drive it myself. It's a whole different idea. Again, it's the kid on the playground who does not need to move, but it's for itself fun. Right? Obviously, there's some responsibilities to it. You want to be careful with your body. And nowadays, obviously, when we're talking sports cars, maybe people discuss in terms of want to be more aware of the environment and such. Sure. So there's coming more into these discussions. But overall, I feel the freedom and the scale of mobility is just going to expand. Another thing which is going to happen in the future with mobility, I feel, and we talked about this, it's going to be way more shared and way more individual.
Yeah, that goes also with the freedom. Like if everything is combining those, yes, that could be more shared. And I'm losing there.
Yeah.
What is the other words you mentioned?
Individual, very individualized for you. The journey can be
Customizable, like it personalized everything. So it's like seats, music, lights, frequency, everything is what I loved in the car.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like actually it's not my car because I'm probably not going to own a car. I'm going to subscribe to a car, share the car with others.
I mean, there's always, again, I think the spectrum's always going to be even wider. I think there's always going to be the case for a certain level where you want to own something or you really want to have it, make it completely yours in detail levels which we cannot think of, which are just like very, very individual, but just more individualized in terms of shared and individual. And cars could be, in terms of autonomic driving, that thing. It could be more shared. So you actually do share this certain device. You share this car, or you share, nowadays we share airplanes, but because it's very expensive to own your own airplane. But the experience is not super individualized. Yes, you can change a little bit how your chair goes, and you can change the program on maybe on longer flights. You can change the program you're watching. But maybe that also expands, and with some future technology, like physical technology in terms of chairs, but also combined always with software. So the experience you might want to have on that certain screen, and you extend your, I don't know, your device you bring with you, maybe your laptop, and then you extend that on the display. These technologies are technically there yet to a certain extent, but they're not applied in that sense. And I think that could also change the way we think of mobility in all these different ways we talked earlier. Also in the future of mobility, and we're jumping here between the topics, but I also think it's very interesting that we have increasingly health issues because people are getting apparently
Back to the human body.
Back to the human body. Yeah, people are working longer than ever to a certain extent, it feels like, and in a way, sitting positions, and I mean, all we came up with so far is certain concept of moving tables. That's maybe not enough. And then we all talk about, yeah, we should move more, we should have a walk at lunch, and it's still a difficult thing. But at the same time, we have in a lot of Western countries, like fitness is going crazy. Like gyms are like all over the place. People are somehow really getting crazy on all different types of sports. There's so much things going on, all the way from basic strength training to running and all things in between. New devices of different types of scooters or bikes and all these different types of bikes in between.
You mean e-bikes, bikes in between?
Yeah, e-bikes, but also like they have, what is it? I don't know. I'm not an expert in bikes, but they have like different types of gravel bike and a mountain bike and a downhill bike and all of that. And then you have CrossFit and have yoga. And then it feels that this is recently, in the recent 10 years, increasingly a topic for almost everyone. And again, it's the same. It expands because we have more unhealthy people and not moving people than ever. And at the same time, we have a lot of huge hype around sports, about being athletic, about being having a fit and healthy body. And yeah, I think all of these things are definitely building a future way of mobility in a whole more holistic sense.
It's nice that only by talking about what does mobility mean to us, like we're coming up with a lot of interesting words, like this future, like we want to have the freedom journey, we talked about it, and like basically having ownership of the body, and we want to move more to have the more extent.
To pick something which people, as you said, not think in the first place about mobility, talk about what are the exact approaches we have other than a moving table where you stand and sit. There has to be more in the futuristic or nowadays in future workplace. What are actually approaches for the future? Are there new devices? Is there more tech which tries to help us? Or is there new living advices how to actually go for a walk on your lunch? We have technology. So we have active noise cancelling headphones. So people now may go on a walk rather than before, because now finally they can go into a phone call.
Which is also quite dangerous to have a noise cancelling head unit and just like walking around the street. No.
Yeah, in certain urban areas, it might be very dangerous. Can be, sure. I mean, then there's another technology approach, and they came up with transparency modes. Like I think most of the active noise cancelling headphones have that. Maybe you want to close that to a certain extent, but expands your mobility. It expands the way you move yourself through the world. So yes, it's a little bit included in the terms we think of mobility. And that's, you want to be broad. You want to really keep that in mind, what mobility can mean. And that's why it's so interesting, because it combines the freedom, how we move through the world. It combines technology. It combines the something everyone on the planet is somehow involved with. Everyone needs to move. Everyone wants freedom. And the future approaches. That's what it combines. Yeah. Talking about it, I also was thinking because you mentioned earlier autonomous driving. So wouldn't that something that makes us moving less?
What do you mean moving less?
Or would it makes us move more? Like,
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. Like, because we're also
I'm not sure if it's
mixing the movement of our own body with the movement of me go from A to B.
yeah. Would you move more because you don't have to drive yourself, or would you think then, or you actually move less because you don't need your cognitive senses to drive the car, right? You're still sitting maybe on a device.
I think like to put it in a very simple answer, I think go back to the freedom part. At least this technology is giving you the options and giving you the options to move further, move more, move when you have time of driving or not have time of driving, but still give you the choice of driving by yourself. Or if it's super near 2 kilometers away, you can always go for a run or just like bike there. But this technology, I think, is still helpful in terms of it offers you more options, and that is what for me the freedom.
So having autonomous cars in the future, let's say we have that, or we're moving towards that, would give us another option, which is very individual way of traveling, is that's how I call it. It's another option to travel where you say this is very individual. I don't have to wait for a certain train. I don't have to buy a certain ticket maybe. Maybe I can own that car or be on a subscription model or something. So highly individual. The way, when, and exactly how I want to move and where exactly on point I want to move. I don't have to go to a certain train station. It's a car. But I have the freedom of doing it even if I have maybe work to do on a laptop, if that's still a thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's a point. And also, like nowadays, it's so moving from A to B seems easy, but still you have a lot of restrictions. For example, I have a Chinese driver license, but I never have a German one. So I can theoretically drive, but I'm not allowed to drive here. That's why I'm like a big fan of autonomous driving technology. I'm hoping for the technology to arrive so that I do not need to take that much care of getting a license to recognized by a government. That part will be taken care of advanced car. And I will be just enjoying the freedom and the mobility, the easiness of traveling from A to B and have a good time while traveling.
Also, yeah, that expands your mobility in the future.
Exactly.
Because you have the exact individual upsides of a car in any country on the world without having any further, yeah, you don't need a license or exactly that.
And for the future, I would love that, and also with the different services combined. So probably I would not always using the car. I mean, I can take train, and for the last miles, I can ride a bike or have a scooter, whatever that's available there. For me, what is important is the journey needs to be fun, and the whole process needs to be intuitive.
Yeah.
I shouldn't need to like register for every apps that I need to go through. It should remember what are my preferences, and I should be able to choose which car do I need for this trip because I probably want different ones.
Yeah, and I don't want to open this one. I'm just saying we have to have a side note that there's security is a huge topic. Let's not jump too deeply into it, but there's a lot of data used from you, of you, and there's a lot of like safety discussions, specifically with autonomous driving. But let me give you a challenging question. What I just came up with is going somewhere, like let's say nowadays, and I don't have a driver license, I still have the exact same mobility if I use a taxi or an Uber, which is comparable in that sense. So where's the difference? Is it just that we don't need the human being behind the wheel? But other than that, the autonomous driving is kind of the future of taxis or Ubers?
I think like long-term wise, the cost for autonomous driving cars would be lower because you actually get rid of the labor cost there. I mean, that will cause some impact on the society for the worker consensus also.
Yeah.
But besides that part, if we're just talking about this technology, and it actually will lower the cost because the cars will drive itself. We do not always depend on the other person's availability, working time or so. And for me, what is also quite important is the privacy. And
you're even more private to a certain extent.
no, right. Like if I'm only the only person in the car, or I'm only in this car with my other friends, like I would not need to worry about if we're having a private conversation or so. Or actually, I mean, this has something to do with some news in China. The Didi, like the competitors of Uber in China, is having quite big issues for a while because there's some not so good criminal cases ongoing between passengers and drivers. It goes both directions actually, as awful as that sounds. And that would not be the case if I'm the only one who's in the car, or only me and my friend.
Also, the autonomous car would not get tired, so maybe you have less likelihood for
Exactly.
an accident in that case. On the other hand, we all think of the security problems we have with autonomous driving. I mean, it's a huge topic in that sense. And as you mentioned, it goes very far in terms of how it's going to change society, in terms of the jobs which are related to this kind of mobility.
But we always need to take into consideration that we're talking about different time ranges here, right? The situation I'm describing is very far in the future. Maybe it comes in 50 years, maybe not, we don't know. But of course, like in this process, many things could happen, like because like the changes for society, for example, and probably there will be a lot of accidents when this technology is not so advanced yet.
Yeah.
It is for sure not a perfect solution today, but I at least personally think that is a very promising solution, very helpful thing in the future.
What would be, if you can like only choose 3 words for future mobility, what 3 words would you try to throw at the problem or throw at it?
That's a very interesting question. 3 words. I think the first one I would totally go with the intuitive.
Intuitive?
Yeah, I think the whole mobility experience would have to be intuitive. Like I, as a mobility user, or as anyone who would need to travel from A to B, all the services around it, the whole experience needs to be just intuitive. I do not need to put actual efforts in finding a car, booking a car. It just like kind of learn my behavior and comes to me. And that's already behind that requires a lot of technologies also. That brings to the second keywords, I would say, is the technology. Like a little bit repeat what I said before, I think it will be like a playground for different technologies. When they integrate it together and well matched with each other, the whole system will work so perfectly that I will have all my needs met. And I can just get in there, have my favorite software running, do whatever I want to do with my free time. I mean, I can choose to use a software system, the infotainment system in the car, or I can just choose I want it just to give me a very nice environment of nice lighting and music, and then I'll just chill, do a meditation, just spend my time in car. But all this needs to be enabled by, for example, very smart engine behind the system or super fast connections for the internet. For example, if I'm a gamer, I definitely do not want a delay of latency of 1 second there. I would hate that. But of course, that's something comes in the further future. And the third one I would go actually is integrated. Because I think now, if you think about mobility, it's still quite segmented. Like in terms of the short terms, if I want to go from my place to a nearest supermarket, or if I travel from city A to city B, or if I travel cross continents. And in the future, I probably want just one app, one station where I can just book everything, and I do not always go through this registration process, like this, what is called KYC in a sense. That would be a headache, and it would be just very well integrated. and also not only me, but also probably goods as well. I would on the way book something and deliver it already to my home. And also, like today it's the summer here, like if I want my home already be cooled down, I can probably also do that from my car. Like everything needs to be integrated and go back to the intuitive process.
Yeah, I would maybe add like so you said intuitive, you said tech, and you said integrated or integration. And what word came up to my mind while listening to you were also like software is, I think, the main
A big
thing.
difference, no?
Yeah, I mean, technology is a word and software is part of that, but I think it's going to be the main differentiator long term. There has to be a lot of physical developments, right? But I think the main thing is software and everything based on that and jumps on, which brings us to the other one you said with integration or integrated. I would say seamless, maybe might be a word.
Yeah, it goes like even one step further. Do not only need to be integrated, but seamless.
Seamless, right? That's what I kind of wanted. I can think back of the day when my world was a little smaller in my small town I grew up in. I was using a skateboard. And I was always preferring that over a bike. And I was also preferring it over, what was it, inline skaters, so like these rollerblades, yeah. Because it was more seamless. I was going from sitting and hanging out with my boys on the skateboard to get up, running, jump on the board, having the ride, going over all these different kind of streets and different, maybe there comes a different types of, ground in terms of like some dust and such. So you have to like grab the board, and I was actually able to like, while riding it, jumping, grabbing it, going inside to a building, maybe shopping or whatever, or grabbing some food somewhere. That it felt so seamless. It was like fast and it was like very flexible, very agile. Like with a bike, I was not able to go up the stairs so fast. With my skateboard, I was after a while able to like from riding, like sweeping the like board up, grabbing in my hand, running up the stairs, going around the corner. I was like way faster, like inside an urban scenario on a certain level. Obviously in New York City, they might be a little longer, but skateboard, I mean, they came up recently in the last, what was like 5, 6, 7 years ago with these electric skateboards.
Yeah, so even like you can do that.
That was even better because even further, because maybe after a while you're like just exhausted or you don't want to become so sweaty in the morning. When you have to go to work or something, you maybe do not want to go by skateboard. Electric skateboard kind of closed that gap a little bit more, and it is also extended the range how far you want to go somewhere. That felt super seamless, and it was even more seamless because I was like, trying to be in an urban scenario, going into like a, what's it called, like in a train or like in a
You can combine that with other transportation.
going into underground with a bike. Yeah, that's a pain in, but with a skateboard, it was easy. Just grab it, go through it, and then afterwards rolling again. The only thing is I had to always have that skateboard with me. So, I mean, it was easy. It was not that biggest part of the device, but still it was just a thing I had to be with me. Maybe that's the only thing I wanted sometimes to reduce, right? And there's a certain look to it. It looks very youthful, which is great because it's playful.
Shows some kind of lifestyles, what type of person you are.
Yeah, and maybe not look so business-like. I mean, you got a little better in some scenarios, but still maybe in terms of entering a business meeting room with a skateboard still has a certain look. I mean, with a bike, I don't know nowadays. Might be more acceptable, depending, right? So yeah, seamless is definitely something we want to have in future mobility, right? And software is a broad word, but it's what else? That's not one word, but user-centric.
For sure, yes.
That's design, that's business models, a little bit to what you said. It's the physical device, which a little bit what we talked earlier, that future mobility might be way more individualized. All of that goes through a user-centric perspective. What is good? How can we sell better? That's from a capitalistic viewpoint. And how can I be more mobile? How can I have a better mobility? From your personal perspective, what do you want? What do you prefer? Sometimes that might be not even so individual in terms of the travel. Sometimes you actually want to have a certain type of travel where you get to know people.
And also with this shared transportation like buses, flights, like that's perfect chances for meeting new people, and also that's more environmental friendly, right? That's also what mobility is also now a very important topic in mobility fields. And of course you want that as well. But yes, the human-centric, I can only agree with you. That's also, I guess, what I wanted to say was intuitive a little bit.
Yeah.
Because you can only make something intuitive when you imagine yourself as the one who's actually using it. Yeah, and that's so beautiful because mobility is something everyone is involved in, Like you cannot go around that topic.
Sure.
Like you encounter that every day, if not 2 or 3 or 4 hours if you live in a big city like Beijing or Shanghai. So better make that hours worth it. Yeah. Do we continue talking or?
Oh no, I think for now we're gonna go have some dinner. That's a good thing. What is the way of mobility we're gonna choose for that? Walking? Today? I think I know a restaurant close by. Let's walk. All right.